In 1962, a Greek immigrant named Sam Panopoulos opened a tin of pineapple at his diner in Chatham, Ontario, threw it on a pizza as a joke, and accidentally started a war that has not ended in 60 years. That pizza is on this list. So is a cocktail invented at a Calgary hotel that became the most consumed mixed drink in the country. So is a baby food invented by 3 doctors in Toronto that saved hundreds of thousands of infant lives around the world. Most Canadians have no idea how many of the foods they eat every day were invented right here. And most Americans, Brits, and Australians eating these foods have no idea they are eating something Canadian. Number 19 is in almost every kitchen on Earth, and nobody knows a Canadian patented it. Number 8 started the most famous food argument in human history, and number 1 is a food so completely Canadian that the rest of the world still does not fully understand it, even as they start to copy it. These are 25 foods invented in Canada that the whole world now eats. Hit that subscribe button. Let us count them down. Number 25, ginger beef, a Canadian Chinese dish of crispy fried beef strips coated in a sweet, sticky ginger sauce, invented in Calgary, Alberta. Chef George Wong created it at his restaurant in the 1970s, adapting a traditional Chinese dish for Canadian tastes by deep frying the beef until crunchy and coating it in a sauce sweeter and thicker than anything served in China. Today, ginger beef is on the menu of nearly every Chinese Canadian restaurant in the country, and most people who order it have no idea it was invented in Alberta, not Asia. It is one of dozens of dishes that exist only because Canada created its own version of Chinese food, the same way it created its own version of everything. Number 24, the Spartan apple. Developed in Summerland, British Columbia in 1936, the Spartan was one of the first apples in the world, created through a deliberate scientific breeding program. It was bred from the Macintosh, which is itself a Canadian apple, and it produced a crisp, sweet, deep red fruit that stored well and shipped well. The Spartan became a commercial success and is still grown around the world today. It represents something Canada did better than almost anyone, which is take an existing food and engineer a superior version of it through patient agricultural science in a research station most people have never heard of. Number 23, canola oil. Developed at the University of Manitoba and by the National Research Council in the early 1970s, canola oil was created by breeding rapeseed to remove the bitter, unhealthy compounds that made the original plant unsuitable for cooking. The name itself is Canadian. Canola stands for Canadian oil, low acid. Today, canola is one of the most widely used cooking oils on the planet, grown across millions of acres and used in kitchens, factories, and restaurants worldwide. The next time you fry an egg in vegetable oil, there is a strong chance you are using a plant that Canadian scientists engineered into existence. Number 22, Crispy Crunch, a chocolate bar with a flaky peanut butter core, created by Harold Oswin in 1930 for the Canadian company Nielsen. It won a national contest to name a new chocolate bar and went on to become one of the best-selling bars in Canadian history. For decades, it was available only in Canada, which meant that Canadians traveling abroad would bring them as gifts, and Americans who tasted one would ask where they could buy more. The answer, for most of its life, was nowhere except Canada. It is one of a whole category of chocolate bars that Canada kept to itself. Number 21, Coffee Crepe Crisp, a chocolate bar made of layers of vanilla wafer and foamed coffee-flavored candy covered in milk chocolate. It is one of the most beloved chocolate bars in Canada, and for most of its existence, it was nearly impossible to find anywhere else. The phrase that built its fame was that it makes a nice, light snack, and generations of Canadians grew up on it. When Coffee Crisp finally started appearing on some American shelves, it developed a cult following among people who had tasted it on trips to Canada and could not find it at home. A chocolate bar that became a souvenir is a uniquely Canadian achievement. Number 20, Saskatoon Berry Pie, made from the Saskatoon berry, a small purple fruit native to the Canadian prairies that tastes like a cross between a blueberry and an almond. Indigenous peoples of the prairies harvested Saskatoons for thousands of years and used them in pemmican. Settlers learned to bake them into pies, and the Saskatoon berry pie became a prairie staple. The city of Saskatoon is named after the berry, not the other way around. The pie remains largely unknown outside of Western Canada, which makes it one of the most distinctly regional desserts in the country, a flavor that millions of prairie Canadians grew up with, and most of the world has never tasted. Number 19. Peanut butter. This is the one that shocks people. The process for making modern peanut butter was patented by a Canadian. Marcellus Gilmore Edson, a chemist from Montreal, Quebec, received a United States patent in 1884 for a method of milling roasted peanuts between two heated surfaces to produce a smooth peanut paste. The heat was the key. It released the natural oils and created the spreadable texture we know today. Other people later refined and commercialized peanut butter, but the foundational process, the one that turns roasted peanuts into the butter in the jar, was patented by a Montrealer 4 decades before it became an American lunchbox staple. Every peanut butter sandwich in the world traces back to a Canadian chemist. Number 18. Montreal-style bagels. Smaller, thinner, sweeter, and denser than the New York bagel, the Montreal bagel is hand-rolled, boiled in honey-sweetened water, and baked in a wood-fired oven. It has a larger hole and a chewier texture, and it is sold by the dozen, still warm, from bakeries in Montreal that have been running the same ovens for nearly a century. Brought to Montreal by Jewish immigrants from Eastern Europe, the bagel evolved into something distinctly Montreal, distinctly different from its American cousin, and fiercely defended by the city that perfected it. People fly bags of them across the country because they cannot be properly replicated anywhere else. Number 17. The Nanaimo bar, a no-bake dessert with 3 layers, a crumb and coconut base, a custard icing center, and a chocolate top, named after the city of Nanaimo, British Columbia. The first documented recipe under the name appeared in a Vancouver cookbook in 1953. The Nanaimo bar is one of the most Canadian desserts that exists and one of the least known internationally. Ask an American if they have ever had a Nanaimo bar, and you will almost always get a blank stare. Ask a Canadian, and you will get a memory. It is a dessert that defines a national palate while remaining almost invisible to the rest of the world, though that is slowly changing as Canadian expats spread it abroad. Number 16. Ketchup chips, a potato chip dusted with a tangy, sweet, bright red, ketchup-flavored seasoning that stains your fingers and is almost impossible to find outside of Canada. Ketchup chips are a Canadian institution, sold in every convenience store and grocery store in the country, and they are one of the first things Canadians abroad say they miss. Americans who visit Canada are baffled and then converted. The flavor exists in other countries in small quantities now, but Canada is where it was born and where it remains a core part of the national snack identity. A red-stained thumb is a Canadian childhood memory. Number 15. Montreal smoked meat. Beef brisket cured with a blend of spices, smoked and steamed, then piled high on rye bread with mustard. Brought to Montreal by Jewish immigrants from Eastern Europe and Romania, it evolved into something specific to the city, distinct from New York pastrami in its spice blend and its texture. The most famous delicatessens in Montreal have been serving it for over 100 years, slicing it by hand, and people line up around the block for a sandwich that exists in its true form only in that city. It is one of the great immigrant food inventions of North America, and it is unmistakably Canadian. Number 14. The butter tart, a small pastry shell filled with butter, sugar, syrup, and egg, baked until the filling is gooey and the top is crisp. The earliest known recipe was recorded in Barrie, Ontario in 1900, making it one of the few desserts that is genuinely originally Canadian rather than adapted from another country. The butter tart inspires fierce debate in Canada. Raisins or no raisins, runny or firm, and there are butter tart festivals and butter tart trails across Ontario. It is a small thing, a single bite, but it is one of the purest examples of a food that Canada invented from scratch and that the rest of the world has never properly discovered. First pattern break. Here is what makes Canadian food invention so strange and so invisible. Canada spent most of its history being told it did not have a food culture. The country was caught between Britain, France, and the United States, and the assumption was that everything Canadians ate came from somewhere else. But that assumption was wrong. While the world was not paying attention, Canadians were quietly inventing foods that would spread across the entire planet, and then forgetting to take credit for them. Hawaiian pizza is eaten in every country on Earth, and almost nobody knows it came from Ontario. Peanut butter is in billions of kitchens, and almost nobody knows the process was patented by a Montrealer. Ginger ale, instant mashed potatoes, the egg carton that protects the eggs in your fridge right now. All Canadian, all invisible. Canada did not just contribute to global food, it quietly reshaped it and then stood back politely while other countries took the credit. This list is the credit finally given. Number 13. Pablum. Not a snack, but one of the most important food inventions in Canadian history. Pablum was a pre-cooked, vitamin-enriched infant cereal created in 1930 by three doctors, Frederick Tisdall, Theodore Drake, and Alan Brown, at the Hospital for Sick Children in Toronto. At a time when infant mortality was high and babies were dying from malnutrition, these doctors created a nutritionally complete baby food that was easy to digest and fortified with the vitamins and minerals infants needed. Pablum saved hundreds of thousands of lives around the world. The doctors directed the royalties back to the hospital. It is the most quietly heroic food on this list, a Canadian invention that measured its success not in sales, but in children who lived. Number 12. Instant mashed potatoes, invented by Edward Asselbergs, a food scientist working for the Canadian Department of Agriculture in Ottawa in 1962. He developed a method of cooking, mashing, and dehydrating potatoes into flakes that reconstituted into mashed potatoes when hot water or milk was added. The invention transformed convenience food, military rations, and emergency food supplies around the world. Every box of instant mashed potato flakes on every grocery shelf on Earth descends from the process that a Canadian government scientist perfected in an Ottawa lab. It is not glamorous, but it fed soldiers, campers, and busy families across the globe for over 60 years. Number 11. The California Roll. Despite the name, the California Roll was most likely invented by a Japanese-Canadian chef named Hidekazu Tojo in Vancouver, British Columbia in the 1970s. Tojo created an inside-out roll with the rice on the outside and the seaweed hidden inside because his North American customers were put off by the black seaweed wrapper. He filled it with crab and avocado. The roll became the gateway sushi for millions of Westerners who were intimidated by traditional sushi, and it opened the door to the global sushi boom. The name says California, but the chef and the city were Canadian. Number 10. Sushi pizza, a crispy disc of fried sushi rice topped with raw fish, avocado, and spicy mayonnaise. Invented in Toronto in the 1990s. It sounds absurd, and it is delicious, and it is found in Japanese-Canadian restaurants across the country. Like Hawaiian pizza and ginger beef, sushi pizza is an example of Canada's particular genius for taking two unrelated cuisines and smashing them together into something that should not work but does. It is spread to other countries as a novelty, but its home is Toronto, where it remains a menu staple that surprises every visitor. Number 9. Split pea soup. Thick, yellow, smoky. Split pea soup made with salt pork was popularized by French-Canadian mill workers and habitants in Quebec, who carried the recipe and the tradition through generations. While dried peas have been eaten for thousands of years, the specific French-Canadian version, the pea soup that simmered on every Quebec stove and crossed into New England with Quebec migrants, became a defining comfort food of the region. It is the soup of the fur trade, the logging camp, and the farmhouse kitchen, and it is one of the oldest continuously eaten Canadian dishes on this list. Number 8. Hawaiian pizza, the food that started the most famous argument in the history of eating. Invented in 1962 by Sam Panopoulos, a Greek-born restaurateur, at the Satellite restaurant in Chatham, Ontario. He had tried pizza in Naples on his way to Canada and started experimenting with toppings at his diner. On a whim, he added canned pineapple named after the Hawaiian brand on the tin, along with ham. The sweet and savory combination divided the world. Today, pineapple on pizza is debated in every country where pizza is eaten, defended passionately, and condemned furiously. And the entire global argument traces back to one Greek Canadian in a small Ontario town opening a can of pineapple. No food on this list has generated more conversation, and it is 100% Canadian. Number 7. Canada Dry Ginger Ale, invented by John J. McLaughlin, a pharmacist from Toronto who patented his pale dry ginger ale in 1907. McLaughlin wanted a ginger ale that was lighter, crisper, and less sweet than the dark, syrupy Irish versions. He labeled it with a map of Canada and a beaver and called it Canada Dry. During American Prohibition, it became famous for masking the harsh taste of bootleg liquor, which made it a fixture of the cocktail world. Today, Canada Dry is sold in dozens of countries, the name literally announcing its origin on every can. And yet most people who drink it have never once thought about the fact that it is named after the country that invented it. Number 6. The EGG carton. This is technically not a food, but it touches almost every food on this list, and it changed how the world buys eggs. The molded egg carton was invented by Joseph Coyle in Smithers, British Columbia in 1911 to settle a dispute between a hotel owner and a farmer over eggs being broken during delivery. Coyle designed a carton with individual cushioned compartments that protected each egg. Before his invention, eggs were sold loose and broke constantly. Every egg carton in every grocery store on Earth descends from a design created by a Canadian newspaperman to stop a hotel keeper from complaining about cracked eggs. Number 5. The Wonder Bar and the rest of Canada's secret chocolate empire. Canada developed an entire category of chocolate bars that the rest of the world, especially the United States, never got. The Wonder Bar, a peanut butter and caramel bar, the Crispy Crunch, the Coffee Crisp, the Mr. Big, the Caramilk, with its mysterious flowing caramel center that launched the famous Caramel secret advertising campaign. For decades, these bars existed almost exclusively in Canada, creating a strange situation where Canadian chocolate was a kind of contraband that Canadians smuggled to friends abroad and that visitors discovered with delight. Canada built a parallel chocolate universe and kept most of it to itself. Number 4. Maple syrup and maple taffy. While maple syrup itself comes from a tradition that Indigenous peoples developed long before European contact, Canada perfected, industrialized, and came to dominate the global maple syrup supply, producing the overwhelming majority of the world's maple syrup. And from it came maple taffy, the sugar-on-snow treat where hot maple syrup is poured onto fresh snow and rolled onto a stick as it hardens. Sold at every sugar shack in Quebec and Ontario every spring, maple taffy is one of the oldest and most joyful Canadian food traditions, a direct line from Indigenous knowledge to the cabana sucre that families still visit every March. Second pattern break. Here is the thread that runs through this entire list. Almost every food on it was invented by an immigrant or adapted from Indigenous knowledge. A Greek immigrant invented Hawaiian pizza. Jewish immigrants created Montreal smoked meat and the Montreal bagel. A Japanese-Canadian chef made the California roll. Chinese-Canadian cooks created ginger beef. Indigenous peoples gave the world maple syrup and the Saskatoon berry, and the foundation of pemmican. The story of Canadian food is the story of people arriving from somewhere else, or people who were here first, taking what they knew and what they found, and creating something that had never existed before. That is not a weakness of Canadian food culture. It is the entire point of it. Canada did not invent these foods despite being a nation of immigrants and Indigenous peoples. It invented them because of it. The most Canadian thing about Canadian food is that it came from everywhere and became something new. Number 3. The beaver tail. A flat, fried pastry stretched into the shape of a beaver's tail, dusted with cinnamon sugar or topped with chocolate, fruit, or candy. Invented and popularized in Ontario, the beaver tail became a national treat sold at festivals, ski hills, and the Rideau Canal in Ottawa, where skaters eat them hot off the fryer in the dead of winter. It is fried dough, which exists in many cultures, but the specific Canadian form, the shape, the name, the cinnamon sugar, the winter ritual of eating one with cold hands, is purely Canadian. Even a visiting American president once famously ate one, and the world briefly wondered what it was. Number 2. The Bloody Caesar, Canada's national cocktail, invented by bartender Walter Chell in Calgary, Alberta in 1969 for the opening of a new Italian restaurant. Chell wanted a drink that captured the flavor of spaghetti with clams, so he combined vodka, tomato juice, and clam broth, then added Worcestershire sauce and spices, and rimmed the glass with celery salt. The clam-tomato combination did not exist commercially yet, so Chell helped to develop what became Clamato juice. Canadians drink hundreds of millions of Caesars every year. It is the most ordered cocktail in the country, and it is almost completely unknown outside Canada, where the idea of clam juice in a cocktail strikes people as bizarre until they taste one. It is the most Canadian drink in existence, and the world is only beginning to discover it. Number 1. Poutine. French fries topped with fresh cheese curds and smothered in hot gravy, invented in rural Quebec in the late 1950s. There are several competing claims about exactly which Quebec town and which diner first served it, but there is no doubt that poutine is Canadian to its core. For decades it was dismissed, even mocked, as crude rural food. Then it became a Quebec icon, then a national dish, then a global phenomenon. Today you can find poutine in New York, London, Tokyo, and Paris, often dressed up in expensive restaurants with foie gras or lobster. But the original, the paper tray of fries and squeaky curds drowned in gravy from a roadside casse-croûte in Quebec, remains the truest version. Poutine is the food that took the longest journey of anything on this list, from embarrassment to national symbol to international export. The squeak of fresh cheese curds, the steam rising off the gravy, the fries going soft underneath, is the taste of Canada itself. The whole world is eating it now. And it started in a small town in Quebec, where someone decided that fries and gravy needed cheese, and changed Canadian food forever. Here is my challenge. The next time you eat one of these foods, tell someone where it came from. Tell them peanut butter was patented by a Montrealer. Tell them Hawaiian pizza started in Chatham, Ontario. Tell them the egg carton protecting their eggs was invented in British Columbia to stop a fight over broken eggs. Because Canada spent a century inventing the food the world eats and forgetting to take the credit. And the only way that changes is if Canadians start telling the story. Share which one surprised you most in the comments. I want to know if anyone outside Canada has ever tasted a ketchup chip or a Nanaimo bar. I want to know which of these you grew up eating without ever knowing it was Canadian. Because these are not just foods, they are proof that a country that was told it had no food culture quietly fed the entire world. And it is long past time we said so.